Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a rotation NEP deck. So NEP decks haven't been all the rage for a while, but some JCG tournaments and stuff have been showing them off a lot more lately. So I thought I'd check them out, especially since they run a great Shining Bell Ring. I still think this is one of the most beautiful cards from Chronogenesis, at least in my opinion. So we've got a pretty standard NEP deck overall, running all your pretty normal stuff. You know, you single Zeus because you're running a small reanimate package with the So Death Reap life, along with the fact that you have NEP, which can easily pull Zeus as a nice kind of end game sort of area. Otherwise, you're mainly focusing on the underworlds and everything else. You know, double underworlds are perfect for running that. Definitely want, you know, the Immortal Thanes to come out and get some value, and basically a standard early game for a Shadow deck. The only exception being Ghostly Grasp, which is a good card to remove big late game stuff, and Fall from Grace, which works really nicely to remove amulets. So we'll get right into some games and check it out. First up, we get to play against Portal. Portal is still fairly good. I mean, it does definitely still come down to the player. Portal can quite consistently beat most decks, although it does struggle with Daria just because it doesn't have the same clearing power that a lot of other decks are, and its aggressiveness is more mid-game to late game than actually early game, so you're really not going to be taking any aggro stances with Portal in that way. But against Shadow, it's very interesting. I mean, depending on the Shadow deck, Portal can either have a fun time or a hard time. This deck is really no exception. We do start off with a pretty average curve, getting the Lurching Corpse and Demon Eaters as really good draw power, but really nothing too standoutish. I was trying to work out how this deck was meant to function overall, so if I do misplay it, I do apologize, but played a few NEP decks in my time, and most of them run fairly similarly. You want to be able to drop NEP, get some value out of it, and then with most of the reanimate package stuff, continually get value, so it's not very complicated. It's just a matter of knowing which things are the right times to be played for other things. So, for example here, I think against something like Portal, playing the Lurching Corpse and Demon Eaters early really do present their own kind of value, especially with the draw power that you've got. Especially since I didn't really have any other substantial moves that would make much difference, so using them in this way is mostly fine, especially considering that Portal doesn't really have any massive threats to deal with, so I don't need to worry about saving the Lurchings for something like Bahamut, because most Portal decks you just won't see that kind of outcome, so hitting a 2-2 is usually a pretty good trade-off. We do get the Shining Bell Ringer, great draw power, even better when it does go off with the NEP. We also see the NEP in our hand, along with a few nice cards going from Underworld Watchman right up to the Immortal Thanes, and a nice Aisha just to kind of use as your closer. That's usually how I find Aisha is the best to be used. Winning the game with it, pretty reasonable. And of course, we've got to use the little Soul Squasher here. Again, little Soul Squasher is fine when you're running something like NEP, because NEP will replenish your shadows extremely quickly. Thus, Aisha actually does get its playability, unlike mid Shadow, which can be a little more awkward sometimes to completely play your Soul Squashers and lose those shadows that you may actually need. Acceleradium coming down. Not too surprising, especially with the Hamlin. Going for that kind of combo play again. But we have a pretty nice hand, and I think with just a little time we could whittle the Portalcraft player down quite nicely overall. So turn 7 is a little tricky, I guess. I do decide to throw the zombie parties at this 4-3, although I should have done the ordering slightly differently as not to burn that So Death Reap life. It would have been a little better if I could have kept that in that hand. But we do get to trade with everything on board, and actually no, sorry, we throw the Soul Squasher. Leaving the Hamlin is actually pretty okay, especially considering what our board is like. The Hamlin is going to basically be forced to trade, and even if it doesn't, the Underworld Watchmans will replenish our health if they do decide to go face. Portal does drag out games quite well though, so against a deck that is kind of late gamey, really long games when you're playing against a Portalcraft player. They're really pushing these analyzing artifacts, just kind of playing them out as they go. Although this does mean they need to either find a way to get out of resonance or stay in resonance, one or the other at this point, and discarding a hand of 5 cards is usually pretty average with Portal. You don't want to be discarding any more, but you really don't want to be discarding that many either. So, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword when you're discarding cards like that. The Immortal Thane, though, gets to pretty much remove this 4/3 completely, while leaving a couple of nice things on board that are going to have to be forcefully removed. And our turns from here actually become fairly linear. I mean, we can easily use the Ghostly Grip along with a few other cards here in our hand to really swarm our board as much as we kind of want. Especially with a 0-drop Thane being able to just kind of give us a good, nice, solid ward. These pings, though, kind of a pain. I mean, it would have been nice if I didn't have to deal with them, but dealing with them also isn't impossible, so why not? We do burn another So Death Reap life, so that does mean we've only got the one left, so we only have the chance at one Zeus off their Nep, or just an Underworld Watchman, so really not that lucky in that regard, and really looking for that Aisha to close our game out as soon as possible. Of course, removing the Spinaria are important. Don't want to leave that thing up because it will just spawn more problems later on. They do forcefully remove our Bane. They also throw the Fall from Grace, which pretty big nightmare against the Kawi. You don't want to see a Fall from Grace hit it usually. Luckily for us, they're really just dragging the game out at this point and not really presenting anything new for us to have to deal with. The only real risk we might run into is the fact they make Synthetic Beast us, so we've just got to hope that our Kawis come out at the same time as their Synthetic Beast, thus blocking all their damage. So now our focus will probably be on removal, especially with Nep here. Nep's really just going to throw itself to the board, hope for the best. Which we get a pretty okay split there. I mean, the Belenus worked out nicely, and being able to get rid of the Zeus does mean that So Death Reap Life actually has a pretty decent play. But we will have to wait out this Amulet, which is a pretty big nightmare to have to do. Those Amulets really limit what you can do. Which is why a few decks that I was testing a while back, especially with Windmill Dragon, it was great to run them. Although not so great now because you do have things like Daria, like Blood and Sword, which all use quite low cost followers to deal damage, so it does tend to take up a board slot in your Portal deck. It's only really against stuff like Reanimate Shadow, Dragon, those sort of decks that it really blocks out that kind of damage, so definitely not that good. Do get to play another Underworld though, getting a nice block out. Although if they make the right kind of play, they could very easily just trade it without me gaining any health, but it's enough for them to have to actually trade it alone that really gives me an advantage here. So the Biofabrication, still adding more cards to the deck. They're definitely not going to deck out anytime soon unless they do just absolutely have to throw their hands repeatedly. 8 Double H in Artifact, pretty good. I mean, why not unload your hand? And of course, Entity, this time with an artifact, meaning we do have to wait 4 turns. Kind of unfortunate, especially with how close we are to lethal. Luck of the draw though, Fall from Grace plus So Death Reap Life. Going to be perfect for transforming that Amulet and throwing a Zeus to their face. So most Portal decks only tend to run 2 of that Amulet. If they are running 3, that is a little rare. So we don't really expect another one. Really hopeful we don't, because it'll be a real pain to remove. So otherwise we have lethal with Underworld and more than enough shadows to actually throw it all the way to the face. The only downfall would be a ward or a massive heal, which we just probably won't see. I mean, 1 Fall from Grace will only heal 1 point. It's not going to really be enough. And now that they're actually basically out of play points, I don't see them coming back from this match. Our Underworld will definitely kill them off. And of course we see the tiny little Right just kind of sitting there. So it finally closes the game out. Very long game, as I mentioned. Portal definitely drags your games out when you're playing something like this. It always does. But it kept it very interesting right to the end. So we'll start up the next game and check it out. Okay, on to the next game. We have Shadow versus Shadow. Most people aren't playing Nep, so you won't see it that common. You might actually catch a few people by surprise by playing it, which is a pretty good reason to play Nep right now. So they do throw their entire hand. I do decide to chuck the Nep because it is just too high. I really want something kind of low range for this. Nep's just nice to kind of get off the top in your turns. You don't really just want to hold on to it. After all, it isn't exactly the main focus of the deck. It is just kind of a help to the deck. Mostly you're looking for the Underworlds, Aishas, and Zeus combinations. Any kind of combination that will work in your favor. The Nep is just a quick way to get to them and really not a core card to your early game. You really want it kind of mid-game. Around turn 5 to turn 8 is ideal for Nep to get into your hand because it's not clogging up all your early game cards. Of course, the Ceres, always a great card, especially with its healing. Great for mirror matches, great for any kind of matches really. Ceres just blocks out so much damage and so much potential damage from something like Forest, Blood, or Portal. And even presents a slight challenge for something like D-Shift that is basically forced to trade with it as they don't really want you healing on their turn. And instead of D-Shift, I actually meant Daria. My mistake. It's just so long since I've actually had to go through all that. So, 3-6, solid body. Nothing on here can actually kill it, at least not effectively. Necro Assassin though is a nightmare. Really a pain in the ass to remove it. But from here we've actually got some okay options, I guess. I mean, we do only get a 1-1 skeleton, but Pure-Hearted Singer, great amount of draw power, really quite solid. Once you throw the Evolve on it, we traded the Necro Assassin pretty well. And Demon Eater's in our hand, so we're not lacking any kind of draw power. Belinus, perfect for removing these small things, or just setting up other trades. Lyrial Archer, again, not really a problem. It is going to probably force its 1 damage onto the 3-1. If it doesn't, I would be quite surprised. And then an easy trade into the 1-3, well, the 1-1, sorry. Belinus coming down though. Belinus is always one of those cards. We do use the Ghostly Grip on the 1-1, removing it from the game. Don't want that anymore. Get rid of it. And of course, double Skeleton into Demon Eater. Probably one of the better ideas that I could go with, especially with what we have. Do decide to throw the Skeleton at the Belinus. Skeleton versus Belinus, and a good ping. I mean, it was 50-50, so the odds were definitely there. Definitely great, I mean, leaving a 1-1 up. It does force the trade a little harder. We are also going to be going into turn 7 with a fair few options. Most likely taking the Ghostly and probably the Soul Squasher to the board here. Getting rid of the 3-1 and also removing the 4-2, one of them at least, will really make their board less effective. So, Zombie Party doing its job, and a Belinus securing the 1-drops. Really no concern from their hand right now. Even an Hector right now would be not detrimental to my board, especially with an Underworld in my hand. So it really shows that Nep can hold its own against most decks, especially in the late game. Although I haven't faced Daria with this deck yet, as Daria definitely has dropped off. You don't see it being anywhere near as common as it was week 1. And week 2 really affected it, so week 3 is looking great so far. So they do optimize their trades as much as they can, and we basically get 1 health back. So finally see the Demon Lord drop, but probably too late at this point. I mean, even if you trade here, it's not looking good overall. So we do have the Nap, which could be nice, especially if we get an Underworld. An Underworld would actually be perfect. Yep, nice. The Underworld Watchman, removing the 5-6, healing us for 5. And ends up with the opponent conceding, realizing they can't deal any more damage from your hand, meaning they don't really have much left. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that gameplay. It was a very long video, so I know most of you guys seem to enjoy some of these longer ones, and it's great that I can put them out for you. This deck definitely is a little awkward in situations, but for the most part is very solid. I don't think it's perfect, but for a Nep deck in the current meta structure, I think it's fine. It's definitely got some interesting cards in it, and if you are looking for something pretty different, this is worth a shot. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. As always, you will find the deck list in the description below. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.